Hi, I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Daniel Sterl, and we're back with a new Off the Beaten Path. This is a podcast for basketball coaches who are living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and some of those who have made it out of obscurity.
And it's a place for storytelling where some of the stories are even true, learning, connecting, reconnecting, and food for thought. And my favorite of the show, food for the belly. And today we have a great guest here, a guest that we kind of wanted to get on here numerous times. And, is a guy that probably does more of these shows than we've done our show. So he's going to be a veteran on it. But a college coach, high school coach, state champion coach, national tournament coach, Division I coach. He's done it all. Cabral Huff. We're glad to have you, Huff.
Man, I'm glad to be on, man. I got to live up to the expectations now of all the guests you've had and having wanted me on, but I'm excited, man. My path is kind of a winding road, so lots of stories in there.
And that's what it's all about. That's why we're here. We want to know, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? How'd you get there? That's what this is all about. We're not going to focus on X's and O's, although we'd love to hear some of those. We're not going to focus on your podcast expertise, but it already comes across that you've got it. But we want to hear about the path and why you made some of the choices along the way that you did, and then where it's taken you.
I'm ready to roll. You got it out there, and I'm ready to go.
All right, well, start us off, Huff. What got you into basketball? Was it something in middle school, high school, before that, family? What was it?
Man, if anybody knows me, I'm an Atlanta guy through and through. And there were two stations, if you remember growing up back in our time, WGN and TBS. And that's where you watched your basketball. So you either were a Michael Jordan guy for me or a Dominique Wilkins guy. And as an Atlanta guy, I was a Dominique Wilkins guy. And that's what got me in my love of basketball. I would watch those Hawks games, him, Doc Rivers, Spud, even when they got Reggie Theus and Moses Malone and Kevin Willis. I watch those games and then go out in my backyard and try to do some of those moves, maybe not dunking like Dominique did, but the spin move with the finger roll that he would have, that's what I would try to do. And that got my love for basketball, man. And it just kind of continued to grow from there.
That's awesome. I was a big John Battle fan. That was one of my favorite Hawks.
Mid-range jumper killer right there.
Yeah, and then you had Skip Carey announcing basketball.
Yep.
A lot of people don't know he did that.
Some Randy Whitman there, Corey.
Randy Whitman could stroke it now. We had John contract.
Dwayne Farrell was Dominique's backup, who played at Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And Cliff Levingston. I got some Atlanta Hawks heartbreak in there too now. When you talk about that series in Boston.
Yes. The no goaltend on Kevin McHale always gets overlooked.
Yes.
It was a goaltend. I still say it was a goaltend. I know we talk about the Bird Dominique back, but Hawks win if they call the goaltend on the
I know.
You remember that, sir? Were you somewhere in Brazil watching that?
Brazil. I was watching from home, but on a tape delay. And I'm doing this because the poster on my wall growing up was Kevin Willis with a little sideways dunk. I'm sure you've seen that picture somewhere along the way.
I love it. All right. So talk to us about, did you play in high school, Huff?
Played at Benjamin Mays High School. Got hurt, man, between my junior and senior year. And it kind of really started this path of going into coaching. Had I not got hurt then, I would have never knew I had a benign tumor on my hip. Which in reality, they thought I would never be able to play basketball again. But I was never the same player. So I ended up going to Morehouse, which, if I'm honest, wasn't my first choice. When you're playing basketball, you don't look at, unfortunately, I wasn't looking at Morehouse. That's where I'm going to go play, even though I knew a lot of people who went there. But once I got hurt, it really became an option for me. Was there 2 years, played, and then it was like, I'm not the same player I was. I'm not going to the NBA. I'm not going to do that. So let's kind of look into coaching. And I start coaching, my church league team, which were really guys that were only about 2 to 3 years younger than me. So you're talking about high school kids who were playing church league basketball. And that coaching thing jumped off. That actually made me, because I was an English major, say, let me go take some education classes, because if I'm going to coach, I need to get some education classes in so I can teach. And so I end up doing that at Spelman, taking those classes. But I had a goal of, I wanted to graduate in 4 years, and I wasn't going to summer school, and I didn't want to go any time longer. So I did Teach for America. And, you know, with Teach for America, you think they place you other different places. Well, it was the first year they had opened up Teach for America in Atlanta. And I got placed in Atlanta again, and went to Booker T. Washington High School, and I met with the principal, and right away, she saw everything in my background and said, you're gonna be my JV coach. I'm gonna just go talk to the coach. I know we need one, but you're gonna be my JV coach. So here I am, 21 years old, right in the teeth of it. And that's kind of really how this coaching thing started going for me.
And who was the varsity coach at Booker T at that time?
Harlan Graham. That's 2000, and there was some dudes in the Atlanta public school system back then. Like, you know, you had, the schools were bigger. If anybody knows about Georgia, they were all in the highest classifications back then because you didn't have as many schools then. People weren't really moving out.
And we can talk about Atlanta hoops there at the turn of the century, right? From 99 into 2000, some really good hoops. But take us back just 2 steps. Coaching. You were injured at Mays. You were then stepping away at Morehouse. Did any of the basketball coaches there give you a little in? And did they say, hey, help me out with film, or go scout this game, or take a step towards, you know, the 8th grade team? Any of that kind of stuff happen? Really,
it was, I give so much credit to 2 guys, John Otis, who was the head coach at Mays, and his assistant. They really kind of, you know, dove into me and helped me out. Floyd Mack was the assistant coach name, who eventually became the head coach after John Otis at Mays. They kind of, you know, helped me out a little bit. But then it was a guy named Marlon Ellis, who was at my church, who really let me dive into what coaching was about and get me started into, you know, what it means to really help young men use this game as an avenue to better themselves. And what do you do when you're trying to coach? Like, it's not just about how you play and what you know, but it's how you can teach that to the people that you're coaching.
There you go. And Teach for America, I love to hear that. Here you are, you've signed up. Were you hoping to go to New Orleans or Memphis? And
I had no
idea. Atlanta, or were you excited about that?
I had no idea, and I was open to it. My parents weren't, but I was open to it. And I was like, well, wherever they send me, I'm ready to go. And when I got that letter back that said, you're going to be back in Atlanta, they were excited. I'm not gonna lie, I was still kind of excited. I'm like, oh, I get to stay home. I don't have to go anywhere. So I was really excited. They send you to Houston for the summer, so you kind of get a crash course on everything you need to know. You actually teach in the summer. I taught middle school in Houston in the summer, so that was a great experience there. And then to come back home and be able to be in the first official Teach for America class that was in Atlanta was great.
How hard was that, though? Here you are, 21, you're coaching JV, but you're also teaching in the classroom. How hard was that? One of those moments, or, you know, the kid who was not going to listen, or who connected, you know, the good or the bad?
It was definitely learning on the fly, and especially when you're 21 and they have you teaching seniors. Like, that's a big step. And so you learn on the fly. You learned a lot. They put a lot on your plate. I tell people, you know, you want to talk about getting in this business and what you got to do, whether it's at the collegiate level, high school level. Well, I give them this example right here. At Washington High School, I was the JV coach, assistant varsity coach in basketball. I was the head varsity baseball coach, and I was over the newspaper and yearbook. So imagine what my time was doing all that.
And you taught.
And I taught class.
What did you teach? What class?
12th grade English literature, and then obviously the journalism classes for the newspaper yearbook. So,
all right. So that explains why you and Searle are both so good at this podcast.
right.
I got it now.
And I'll take it back. So, and when I went to, I got a degree, or I wanted to major in English at Morehouse because I went there, but they didn't have a communications. So I thought about being a broadcaster. Right. So that's what I really wanted to do until
Skip Carey days.
Right. I mean, Skip Carey and all those guys that I used to listen to. But I realized, like, I'm not playing in the NBA or Major League Baseball, NFL. I don't know if I'm gonna get a shot at that. So, and then that's when the teaching part and the coaching part start coming in too.
So where did you go from Booker T and how long were you there?
Was at Booker T, Washington for 4 years. Had some great success after Harlan Graham. Wasn't the head coach anymore. It became Virgil Amy, who was the head coach there my last year at Booker T, Washington. And it's funny because I graduated from Mays High School, Atlanta Public School. I'm teaching at Booker T, Washington. You kind of tunnel vision. It's APS all the time. And I remember after our season, there was this job opening at this school in Henry County, Dutchtown High School. And I had no idea where it was, anything about it really. Probably the furthest I had went was South Lake Mall, probably maybe a little bit in the Stockbridge. And so Virgil says, man, you got to step out. You got to do some different things. Go ahead and apply and see what's going on. And I go on the interview. And if you go back to 2004, 2005, Henry County is not Henry County now, where you got to pick your time to drive through so you don't get stuck in traffic. Well, back then you could turn down some dirt roads in Henry County. So Dutchtown High School was being built and it was a dirt road. Like to get to the school, I'm like, what am I doing going on this interview? They're still building the school. And I go on the interview with the principal. She really likes me and she introduces me to a guy. She said, well, I've already named my head coach, but I think you and him will really get along. I'm like, well, who is this guy? Right? Like, and it was Kurt Miller. Now, if you know anything about Miller, you know his dad. And anybody that's been in Georgia has been to one of those camps. So I'm thinking, I get to work with him and get to know his dad. This is great. And that was the next step, was Dutchtown High School, working for Kurt Miller, starting up a brand new varsity program with 9th and 10th graders. Like, you got to imagine, like, you're playing a varsity schedule with 9th and 10th graders. And then I'm his JV coach. So you can imagine what that JV team looked like.
Hey, how hard is that? Tell us a little bit about, building from zero, because schools keep popping up and it's the 9th and the 10th graders and it take a couple years, but how do you do that? How do you start to build the culture and establish what you're going to be?
I give Kurt all that credit, man, about what he was able to do to build that culture, what he wanted, the vision he saw, like from, you've got to design jerseys, you've got to, help them design the floor of the school, all that comes to part. Well, how are you going to start? Then we've got 9th and 10th graders who are going to be playing juniors and seniors. So realistically, you're not going to be very good year one and probably not year two. So how do you measure success? And Kurt had it down, man. I learned so much from him. I learned the organization, about how organized you have to be from him. And we had some great times, man. Like, I remember going to Griffin and playing. And if you remember Jay Rome, who ended up going to play football at UGA, but that place was electric, man. And you had heard about it back in the day, with Darren Hancock, but to be in that gym when they were loud, it was amazing. The funniest story I've got about that, you talk about y'all want these stories, is that, so I think year two, Kurt gets thrown out a game, right? And if I'm not mistaken, our first regional victory in Dutchtown High School history, I got to coach it. So that's a funny story that I never forget.
So Kurt wasn't even there for the first win. He was in the locker room somewhere.
I won't say he wasn't there, but he wasn't to be seen.
I like it. So let me ask you this, because I think it's neat. Like Searle said, not a lot of people get that experience. And I know Dr. Kurt, is a legend in the South Side and now out in Athens. But his dad, obviously, I went to one of those camps. I have a Chuck Miller T-shirt somewhere in the archive somewhere. But how did he come up with the what you were measuring for success if it wasn't wins? Because I know that had to be hard with parents and everything else.
It was all about development and how much better we were getting individually and as a team. And he kind of just measured that. He did a lot of time talking to I know Gene Durton. He talked a lot to him. So we even did Breakfast Club stuff when we first started, 6 a.m. I remember music blasting. I think that was Sierra's first album. And I probably had got enough of hearing that album so much because that was what we were blasting early in the morning. But just to see how much we grew individually as players, as coaches, and then, you know, as a team, like, well, were we better in December than we were in November? Were we better in January? And sometimes that measurement could come by the closeness of the score, or sometimes you would just measure it like, we just battled. Like, we didn't give up. We got knocked around. We just battled. And it built a family atmosphere at Dutchtown to start it off, where you had, you know, fans cheering, knowing there was no way in heck we were going to beat Griffin, but they were cheering like we were going to beat them, you know. So I think those are the little things that he did. He just created those little spots of how we developing and making sure those parents understood that you're not going to see the development in wins and losses probably until by the time they're seniors, but you're going to be able to see it every game, little moments in the game. And he would preach that all the time.
Well, I know we have a lot of listeners or viewers that follow Georgia basketball, high school especially, but I know a lot of times outside of 285 is not considered Atlanta, even though we know the perimeter is huge. But Henry County is one of those places where it has a lot of schools now, but most of them are new. How was that for you coming from Atlanta? You know, did some of your buddies kind of rag you a little bit? You going to a hick town, or did they know it was that close to Atlanta? How did that go?
I don't think people knew how close it was. And then even for myself, I didn't realize the history, you know, whether it was the Eagles Landing or Stockbridge or Henry County itself, until I got down there and immersed myself in it. And you realize, like, wow, there's something more outside. Because like I said, South Lake Mall was about to end. So you knew those schools in Clayton County, but you didn't realize what was being done in Henry County. And we start playing some other schools, you know, having a chance to go to Pike County, or you go down to Upson Lee. Like, I had never been, you know, to those places, and seeing how they feel about basketball and saying, man, there is absolute basketball talent now here. And I think that's what really opened up my eyes to the state of Georgia, and understanding the basketball talent doesn't just reside inside 285. It resides all around this state. And my next job after Dutchtown even helped even more of that, because I was able to get the north side of the state by going up near Rome. And that there's so much basketball in the state. And so by going to Dutchtown, it opened up my eyes, it opened up my friends' eyes, and hopefully it continues to open up people's eyes. I mean, you know, Eagles Landing and has won a state championship. Dutchtown has been very good. Some other schools down that way have had success. You know, like Coach Andrews that was at Stockbridge. Like, before I got down there, I never knew how successful he was. And then you get down there and you go, wow, why don't more people talk about this guy? Right. So that was just another example of it.
Yeah, so, you know, the Douglas brothers get the credit on the south side, but they were the Humphrey brothers.
Yep.
At Stockbridge were you know, both Division I players, you know.
Right.
Big time. Corey says before the podcast, hey, Coach Huff, name drop throughout. We love that. We love hearing names. I think we need to get a little ticker going, because you're winning here with 10 minutes in. You've said a slew of names.
Great ones too.
Yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming. And now, Coach Huff, take us to the north side of the state there. So after Dutchtown, the move takes you up towards Rome.
Yeah, takes me to Cedartown, Georgia. So if somebody's listening right now and says, well, what is Cedartown? The home of Nick Chubb. There you go. The home of Nick Chubb.
I know him.
So I get that. Let me go back before I go to Cedartown. And we talked about this at Washington, about the many jobs that you have to do. So my second year, I was at Dutchtown 2 years. So obviously I'm teaching classes, English classes, but I'm also the head JV girls and boys coach and varsity assistant for both teams. We've got one gym, right? So long nights, a Friday night, you're coaching at 4, maybe it was 3, 4:30, was at 7 and 8:30. And then you got to turn around and do it again on Saturday. Those were long, long nights and days. But if you really want to grind, if they talk about the word grind, if you want to get into business and learn, it's what I did. Had the fortune of working for Kurt and Nita Gilbert, both people who started those programs down there. And it was just a great time. It was the only time I coached girls basketball, but I learned a lot from it. And then got blessed, like I said, to go to Cedartown High School which is in Cedartown, Georgia, near Rome. And it was a really fun experience as a first-time head coach. Probably I learned more about what not to do than what to do in that first year. Coach football, some middle school football, and taught English up there. So.
And you guys made state. Was it your first or second year when you played Hart County? Am I remembering that right?
That was the first year because I was only there 1 year, but it was a crazy year. So I tell people this: I take the job in April, and in August I'm the only child. In August my mother dies, right? And then in February my father dies. So all this happens in this 1 year at Cedartown. Not to mention I can't find a house in Cedartown. So I live on the south side. I live by the airport. So I'm driving about an hour and a half. So basically 3 hours a day I'm on the road going back and forth, just back and forth. But we had some success. I tell people this story. I learned how to deal with media when I was up there. The very first game we beat I think they were number 2, Coosa. If anybody knows North Georgia, Coosa is a very good program. Michael Dean came out of there who went to UGA.
We beat them, Bryant.
Yeah, we beat them first game of the year. And the report, we had a radio station that followed us to every game, newspaper, and they asked me something and I didn't, it wasn't a disparaging comment about the coach, but it was almost like it was a disrespect. I didn't respect what he had done. Young coach, you just excited about winning. And when I tell you game 2, he whooped our tail at their place, like it wasn't even close. Like it was, and I think he just took it out and said, I got to teach this young buck something. But that was an example of learning what not to do and what you should do. And it was a tough region, man. Like we were playing Cartersville, Cass. We had to go all the way down to Sandy Creek. They were in our region. And anybody knows Sandy Creek, they're always good. And we had some success, man. It just, everything happened in that year. And I also at the very end of the year got an opportunity. The Rome Knights and Gladiators. This takes you back right here. ABA and WBA wanted me to become their coach. I go, shoot, let's do it. So our season ends and I say I'm going to resign because I'm going to do this. And I become the head coach of the WBA and ABA Rome Knights and Gladiators. And then by May, I'm trying to find a job because the money ran out.
During the time the money was still there, how did that go? Did you have?
It was great.
I mean, red, white, and blue ball and
yeah, we had
right?
practice. We had some dudes. Now we had some dudes on that team. Jamario Moon was there for a little while. And, I tell this story even to my players now that a lot of time it's not about your talent. It's about what you're going to do extra. So during that time, after our season kind of ended because of the money, I had 2 really good point guards. And I told them, I said, listen, you can't go sit on your couch and do nothing because somebody may call for opportunity. You got to be ready to go. Well, Sam Mitchell was the head coach of the Toronto Raptors during that time. And they were looking for a 3rd point guard. And I don't know how they had gotten information about our guards, but he calls me, he says, I want to see him. I want to work him out. What can we do? So we work out down in Atlanta with those 2 guys. And at the end of the workout, he says, well, coach, I wouldn't be here if I didn't know they could play. But this is an opportunity, and I'm ready to sign somebody right now. Can they do a 17 in a minute? Now, I had told these guys to be in shape, but we hadn't practiced in about 2 months. Neither one of them could do a 17 in a minute. He said, I appreciate it, coach. Walked out the gym, and both those 2 guys missed their opportunity.
I bet you use that story. Yeah, you use that story for your players now about being ready, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
it's
interesting.
The NBA contract because they couldn't do a 17 in a minute.
I'll do anything to play, coach.
I know.
Stay in shape.
I just want an opportunity. Well, that was your opportunity right there.
Wow, that's crazy. That is crazy. Well, tell during that time, were you still teaching while you were? Because I know you resigned from coaching, but were you still teaching to finish out the year?
I still finished out the year teaching, and so that was a tough time. Did you get to May? because you resigned from coaching and you said you were going to finish out the year, but you resigned from teaching too, because you thought this job was going to handle everything, because they were in 2 different leagues. So by being in 2 different leagues, it was going to be able to pay you the salary that you thought and going over. So in May, I'm like, I got to find a job. I was blessed that I was an English teacher, and they're always looking for English teachers, especially as a male. And it's very ironic that a team in our region just needed an English teacher, and that was at Sandy Creek High School. But during that time, there was also this obscure private school that nobody kind of really heard of called Atlanta International that says, we're looking for a head coach. And you know, in this coaching business, Corey, you ask people around, what do you think? And there was not one person who said I should take that job. Not one. Well, what do I do when somebody says you shouldn't take that job? I take it. And it probably is the catalyst. You know, everything's a catalyst, but it's the catalyst for getting me some other stuff. And we end up going 11-14 that year, which was the best record they had in, I know, over 10 years. And we missed
what
state
years
playoff.
are we talking right now? This is AIS.
Yes.
Is it AIS from win to win?
What is that? So that's got to be 2006, 7, if I'm not mistaken.
6, 7. Okay. I'm trying to place it because that was probably the year I left. I was at Galloway for 4 years, and I'm like, wait a second.
Yep.
Do we coach against you? And I didn't remember
who
that.
follows you at Galloway? The name is is Cliff. Was it Cliff Waddy?
Cliff was in there, who came from AIS,
Yep.
and Josh Burr and Tulo, who are all in there now. And Jim Hillary was the guy who took the.
Jim Hillary was the guy that I coached against first. Yep, that's his name. And so that was a unique experience because I had never been in a private school. You know, didn't know anything about the smaller private schools and how it worked. And that year we played a school in Alpharetta named St. Francis, who I had heard a little bit about, but not much. And when we walked out on the floor and I saw their talent, I go, you know how sometimes you look at your team, you go, man. And there was no way we should have won that game, but we do. Like I said, we missed it by 1 game, missed the playoffs by 1 game. And so I'm trying to figure out like how I'm going to schedule the next year. So I called the AD at St. Francis like about scheduling, and he says, would you be interested in this job up here? And we have an opening. Let me get back with you. And I get off the phone. Again, my house is still in South Fulton. So let me go. And I'm like, man, I drove an hour and 30 minutes. I'm not driving 45 minutes through traffic to go to a school. But I go back to the last guy I worked with at Washington High School. Virgil Lamy said, man, go to the interview. You never know what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to that interview and they offer the job. And that, along with just having the opportunity to play them and beat them, those 2 things probably are the real catalyst for where I am even today, is being at St. Francis.
And what was that change like? You talk about AIS with the international population and not much of a focus on basketball. Now you're going to up to St. Francis, where hoops is central, and they've made a commitment to that.
Totally different. At AIS, you could only practice like 4 days a week. Like there wasn't you didn't have to worry about that at St. Francis at all. I mean, I was there long enough to see them build an auxiliary gym on campus, see them build a new weight room facility, see them start football. It was a great time, great 6, 7 years at St. Francis.
Talk about some of those players you had come through at St. Francis.
I mean, we had some pretty good ones. I know most people know Malik Beasley, who's in the NBA right now with Minnesota, Kobe Simmons, who had some time in the NBA with Memphis and Charlotte, just won a championship overseas. Kaiser Gates, who had some time in the Boston Celtics organization in the G League, who's overseas as well. Jordan Jones, who played at Kennesaw State. Josh Coleman, who played at Coastal Carolina. Even had James Banks when I was there, who's now playing overseas, who played at Georgia Tech. Sam Kim, who played at Oxford of Emory. Jalen Simmons, who Corey had the opportunity to coach. This is how far we go back now. That was Waycross. That wasn't even South Georgia State. That was Waycross.
Right. He was a swamp fox.
Swamp Foxes.
I remember driving Jalen down there and to see campus and you know, because it was between him and Marion Military. This is how we go back. And
Yeah.
my relationship with Corey was like, all right, you're going to Corey. That's where you're going. And then, you know, we had like Nigel Jackson, who ended up going to Pfeiffer, Belmont Abbey, then Pfeiffer. Michael Turner and Connor Smith, who both ended up playing at Oglethorpe, D3. So we had a range of guys that played a lot of different places. But it was great times, man. You talk about, you know, my first year winning record, but we don't make the state playoffs. But after that, it was, you know, state playoffs, Elite Eight, Sweet 16s, and eventually becoming a state champion, you know, having those guys come up through the system. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is that they look at stuff now and they talk about whether it's a transfer portal in college or transfers in high school. And we didn't really have that at St. Francis. Those guys, you know, except for two, all kind of played as ninth graders or at least in our eighth grade program and came up through the ranks. Like even the guys, and after I left from the DeJuan Odoms, who's now back at Georgia State, who was at Xavier, they were in the eighth grade program. Like, so that was what was so good about St. Francis, that we didn't have to go and try to sell somebody on why they should come after they were in another high school's program. Like we wanted guys, we were really about building a family, and that's what helped us win. And there's some battles with some guys all over the state when I was there.
How about that? You talk about two things there. One, the transfer portal of today compared to building a program, building the family, and getting success that way. The other thing is you mentioned, yes, Malik Beasley, woohoo, NBA, big time, but you went all the way down to the Pfeiffers and the Oglethorpes. All right. So every kid here counts. Question here is, who is one of those players, be it the Kobe's or Malik's, be it Mike at the other end of the spectrum, who will come watch your game even when you're in Atlanta recruiting, or when you're at Holy Innocents and they're coming through to check out a game? Who comes back, who connects from that team at St. Francis? And why do they do that?
It's really because we really were family. Like we hung out all the time. I remember when I really thought we were going to be really good, I called 3 people and I asked, what did they do when they knew their teams were going to be good? How did they handle that? I called Sherman White, who was at Miller Grove. I called Courtney Brooks, who had coached at soccer, Southwest Atlanta Christian with Dwight Howard. And I called David Boyd. And whatever people may think about David, he got his teams to play together, no matter what. And all 3 of those people said the same thing. It's not about what you're doing on the basketball court. It's off the basketball court to get them together, to play as one. And so when I think about that, that's what made us a family, because yeah, we worked our butts off on that court in practice, workouts, but we hung out with each other. You know, like if it was somebody's birthday, the whole team got together. If it was somebody's parents' birthday, that whole team and their parents got together. So when I think about that, I think about situations like COVID. When COVID first started, like very beginning of it, and people had got out of school, Kobe Simmons' young sister was graduating from elementary school, and he invited me to come do the drive-through celebration. Like, if there's not a family atmosphere, you don't do that. Or I think about Josh Coleman coming to watch my team play at Holy Innocents. Or I'm thinking about Kobe and Kaiser when I got from college back to high school at Duluth, coming to my camp to speak. Or I think about the relationship, even go back to Dutchtown of Michael Zerkis. When you talk about what Kurt was able to do, Michael Zerkis played on the teams at Dutchtown, and every job I've gotten, he's wanted to come see us play. And I think that just comes from when you really build something that's bigger than basketball. We just use this game as a way to teach these guys how to battle through adversity, to be honest with you. And I thought I learned that from Kurt, and I carried it over when I got to St. Francis, and I was at a program for longer than a year. And we really, truly built ourselves upon that. Now, to me, it's what really helped us win a championship. Like, because you're able to have real conversations with guys, hold them accountable, because you know what their family's like, you know what they're like, what they really want. I tell this example every time. I set Kaiser Gates down in a game where I knew college coaches were coming to see him play. And I did not play him. And I told his parents and I told him, I said, if you're not going to do what's right in the classroom, it doesn't matter about these college coaches coming to see you. And he didn't play in the game, and there was no resentment. They knew I had their best interests at heart. Just like I told when I said about driving Jalen to Waycross for that visit, that was nothing for me to get in the car and have 2 or 3 guys and we're going on unofficial visits, you know, or Sundays, if anybody in the Alpharetta area knows, Sundays was the day we opened up our gym and just did workouts. And anybody in that area was in our gym. And there was no, we're trying to get you to come to St. Francis. We were just trying to get better. And if you want to get better, you could come in our gym.
I can attest to that. I know a couple of times when Jalen, one I can think of at Georgia Perimeter, another when we played in Chris Watkins' JUCO report preseason event where the whole St. Francis contingent was there.
Yeah.
Huff and all of Jalen's family, you know, and some of the former players and, you know, cheering us on just like they were, you know, part of our family. Yeah. And it was nice. You know, it's nice to see that. You brought up a great point right there, Huff, that I wanted to ask. You know, you've made some moves going through your path here. You know, other than Booker T at 4 years, the other ones were 2, 1. You know, they were quicker years, and it was kind of, you know, like Virgil had told you, a state champion. He knows, you know, he's been around it. He was telling you, you know, to try to, you know, get uncomfortable and all that. But then you get to St. Francis and you're there for a long time. I guess 2 things on that. One is, did all the moving prepare you for that, or did it kind of set you back a little bit and you had to, you know, reach out to some of those guys like you talked about? And then the other part was, you really looking for that during all these moves? Were you hoping to find a place, or were you still kind of thinking in back of your head, this is another move coming?
I was really looking to find a place, man. I wanted to make a place home. I saw other coaches that really had set their foundation at one place, and they were that place. Like when you mentioned a certain school, you mentioned that coach, and that's what I was looking for. And like I tell people, if I find a house in Cedartown, I don't know if I'm even looking at that, the Rome Knights and Gladiators, maybe, but I don't know, right? I technically wasn't interested in leaving the AIS. I mean, I knew the adversity we were going to face every year of it not really being a basketball school. But I wasn't looking, but I was looking for a place to call home. And that's what St. Francis became for me. It became home. I mean, if I'm honest, it still is. I remember when I got back to high school at Duluth, and the first huddle we had, Adam Flagler can tell you this like it's nothing. I said, all right, 1, 2, 3, go Knights. And he looked at me like, what? Like, we're not. It was just still in my brain because I had been there so long, and it was what I call home. And it's still going to be home, to be honest with you, because I'm not sitting here if it wasn't for the people at St. Francis, the players, the coaches, you know, Mike McCard, Drew Catlett, Greg Moultrie. Like, I can tell you a coaching tree that I had at St. Francis that's
ding, 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 ding.
That was, I mean, Scott Kay, who's now assistant at Berkmar, who has played for the state championship the past 2 years. Greg Moultrie was my first assistant at St. Francis.
How about that?
Now the head coach at Hillgrove, was at South Cobb for many years. Great coach. Drew Catlett, who actually was an assistant at the collegiate level and became my assistant at St. Francis. And he taught me so much, like, about how to prepare these guys to be ready to play when they get to the next level. And I think without him, I wouldn't have been able to get those guys there because he taught me so much. But it also helped those guys, because I think every one of our guys, when they got to the next level, were ready to play. Like, if they didn't play, it wasn't because they didn't know what a film session was, or weights, or a study hall, or, you know, or shoot around. They knew all that kind of stuff.
That's big time that you've got a college assistant as your high school assistant. And then Drew moved on to have some success of his own leading that St. Francis program.
when that time came, it was one of the things like when I knew I was leaving, and then I've done it at a couple of other places. I said, if he doesn't get this job, then it's gonna fall apart. And I didn't mean that like I didn't think anybody else could do it. I just know we had built a family, and that family had to stay together, and that's who the family needed at that particular time.
Mm-hmm. You said something right there. Let's go a little deeper on that, where you said you didn't think somebody else could do it, right? We all think we're indispensable, but it's not really that way. We can move on and somebody else will do a great job. When did you realize that, Coach, that as hard as I work, as great of a job as I've done, it's not about me. It's bigger than the person.
I think as you just get older, you realize that. I think when you're young, as much as we hear it, a lot of times we do think it's about us.
Right.
I mean, we even coach like it's about us. Like we want people to see us. Like it's our ego, even as a man. But as you get older, you realize it has nothing to do with us. And I think I truly learned that. I learned it with Coach Moultrie because I let him handle the defense and whatever he wanted to. But I truly learned it with Drew Catlett. He would come to me and say, Coach, I think we need to do this. And that was the first time in my mind I started saying, well, if you think you need to do it, you go tell him. Why am I going to regurgitate what you're telling me that I may miss a point? You go tell him in the huddle. So there are many times that he would have a clipboard or he'll be saying in the huddle, and I'm behind him. And I think that's when I truly learned that it's bigger than just us. A head coach is just a title. It doesn't mean you know everything or indispensable. That's it.
All right. Well, as comfortable as you were there at St. Francis, you moved on. Why that choice? Where'd you go and why did you decide to make a move?
I always had a goal of coaching collegiate basketball. And so during that time, having some players, you get blessed with having a bunch of people come in your gym to watch them. And so Mark Byington was at Georgia Southern, and he had come in to watch some of our guys, and he had an opening for assistant on his staff. And, you know, I said I was interested, and he was very honest. He said, listen, Coach, I've hired somebody, or I've offered the job to somebody. I think he's going to accept it. If he doesn't, I'll reach back out to you. But if something changes or I ever have a spot on staff, I'll reach back out to you because I think you do a great job. Being honest, I thought it was a coach speak. You know how you tell somebody, and well, it's a Wednesday before Memorial Day, and I get this call from Coach Bynes. He says, listen, I know it's not what you want, but I've got a director of basketball operations spot. I would love to talk to you about it. Can you come down here Friday? And so I go down, and it really even wasn't an interview. It was just him letting me know what the job entailed and why he wanted me. And I had a big decision as I drove from Statesboro back to Atlanta of what I was going to do. And so I talked to the team. And like I said, we were family. So when you talk about the team and some of the family members, and I remember Malik Beasley said this to me. He said, Coach, you've always pushed us towards our dreams, so you should go chase yours. And when he said that kind of was the catalyst for me to accept that job to be the director of basketball operations at Georgia Southern. And it probably was the toughest decision of my life, to be honest with you. And anybody that knows this business, going from being the head coach at St. Francis, especially with the years I had teaching, to go be a director of basketball operations in the Sun Belt at Georgia Southern, I had to take a pay cut, but I wanted to get into business. But it was, one of the best things that happened to me.
What was the first things that hit you in the face that was, oh, this college was like this? And then what were some of the things that were, this is no different?
I think organizational wise, it was no different. You just realize it's kind of ramped up a little bit but you see all the back stuff that goes on in college basketball, budgeting, how they recruit. Like we met about academics, recruiting, scouting. We met about everything. And when you're not in college basketball, you have no idea. You just think college coaches sit in their office and, oh, let me watch some film, and that's about it. And then they get on the phone and maybe call some people. It's way bigger than that. But I remember Mark says, hey, you got to set up the schedule. You got to set up team camp. That was one of the big things. You got to set up, little kids camp. And then you got to start getting ready for our travel. And that was the three biggest things that I had to do starting off. And like, there wasn't a blueprint. Like, you could call the person who you're replacing, they can give you some pointers. There's not a blueprint of, okay, where does coach want to stay? Where does he want to eat? How do they do things at Georgia Southern? So I'm walking into everything new and learning on the fly. And our very first trip, I thought I had lost my job. I thought I was a goner. You know, every team camp goes well, individual camp goes well. You know, you handle all the practice times, all that's good. We get to our first game of the season, and we got to travel to Illinois in November. Plane tickets, everything is good. How we get to the airport. So that weekend was like some big weekend they have in Illinois. So you had a football game, some like family event they're having. So it's packed in Illinois, and we're going there to play. And we get off the plane, and I remember Larry Dixon and Tim Kaine or Angela like, hey, our bus is out there. Yeah. And I'm contacting the guy on the bus. He's like, yeah, I'm outside. It's a white bus. So we get outside, it's snowing already. It's cold. We're coming from Georgia Southern. You probably didn't even have to have a jacket on. And I'm looking for this bus, and I can't find it. I'm texting them again, like, basically, they had given us a shuttle bus, not a charter bus, a shuttle bus that we could barely fit our stuff in. And it's cold. And this charter bus was an older shuttle bus. I don't know if the heat worked or not, but it didn't feel like it. And we're on this bus, and I can just see Mark's face. He goes, you better fix it. You better fix it. And Tim and Larry are trying to help me. And I said, when we fly back to Statesboro, I got to find a job. So basically, I had to find a charter bus for each day of that trip. So my first encounter with travel was horrific. And I just thought it was, I just thought I was getting fired. And we lost a close game too. It was, oh man. But that trip, I learned a lot.
Searle, did you have any of those when you were with Lefty? I'm sure you had a couple of those, right?
There was, so many of those stories, right? But because of that intensity that you're talking about, Huff, you're making sure you're crossing everything and dotting everything. And it is going to be a chicken breast. There's not going to be any thighs or legs with just one scoop of rice with 3 broccolis. And you're going around to every plate at pregame to make sure that's what it is.
You learn a lot.
Every game.
And you learn to make sure that was because the Illinois people had given us that information for that bus company. But you just take the bus companies out of the world. You didn't go by and say, hey, is it a charter bus? Is it this? Like, you got to make sure you have every, like Daniel said, every I dotted and T crossed when you do it. Just like when you go out to eat, knowing your head coach. No, they're not ordering when they get to the venue. That order's already in. It should be coming out when they sit down, other than maybe their drink order, if that.
Yep.
A guy told me one time, when it was way back about 5-6 years ago, I was interviewing for something, and a guy told me that was a Division I head coach. He said that every level you go up, it's more detailed and probably over coached a little bit on everything, or over detailed on everything. And every level you go down, it gets a little less. Doesn't mean people aren't working hard. Doesn't mean they're not coaching hard. They might not have the personnel to be over detailed and over coached in that area. But I always think when he said that, and I think that's a pretty accurate description of each level going up, because things like you're saying, when you go eat, I call ahead, but we might order 20 of the same thing.
Right.
Just grab it and go, but you got someone else doing it, it's going to be more detailed and more oriented and all those things. It's interesting to hear it for small timers off the beaten path like myself when you hear those stories.
Man, that was such a great year. I mean, obviously we played for the conference championship, and probably the worst championship game ever recorded in history. The two highest scoring teams in the league played 39-37 or 39-36 in the championship game in New Orleans. The two Georgia schools in New Orleans, by the way.
Hey, why does that happen though, right? The pressure is immense. You win, you go to the tournament, you lose, you don't. Did that affect it? And you talked about, building up towards those kind of moments. Why could nobody score?
I think obviously the pressure did affect it, but for whatever reason, the Sun Belt had the two best teams playing the late night games the day before on Saturday. I think our game started at 8 Central Time, and Georgia State's was before us. So 6 and 8 maybe. Well, the championship game was at 12 noon.
Mm-hmm.
So like our legs, and even though we had buys, we still had to have played Friday and Saturday. We didn't have to play Wednesday, Thursday. We played Friday, Saturday. You include travel with that, and in a new city, like we were dead tired. Like we were tired. I mean, guys were missing wide open shots. Both teams. You're talking about RJ Hunter and Ryan Harrell and Kevin Ware. Now, Kevin Ware had the best game in that championship game that he had all season. He was a transfer from Louisville.
Right.
But I just think about that. We would have nobody ever, I shouldn't say nobody ever remembers, but that's the Ron Hunter towards Achilles. That's where all that started, him beating us in that game. We had a really good team. If you're from the Florida area, Jelani Hewitt was on that team. He's now an assistant at Chicago State. Trent Weideman, who people remember, was at Charleston and then came to Georgia Southern. His brother coaches at North Gwinnett right now. He was on our team. Eric Ferguson, who was actually a CY in CY's family and was a Georgia Southern player who had some knee injuries. So he wasn't the same as he was from those first big time games where he dominated Auburn early in his career. He was on that team. Curtis Diamond, who was a Georgia guy, was on our team. We had some dudes on that team, but more importantly, that staff that we had at Georgia Southern was phenomenal. Obviously, Coach Byington, who's the head coach at James Madison now, but Andrew Wilson, who's the head coach at VMI now, Tim Kaine, who's now at LSU, was at Murray State with Coach McMahon, Coach John Moran, and some others at Murray State, and is now at LSU, and then Larry Dixon, who's at assistant at South Florida. Like, those guys helped my career tremendously, helping me understand the college business, what coaching college basketball is like, taking me under their wing. So I'm grateful for those guys every day.
Well, you mentioned, guys you work for and guys you coached. Tell us a little bit about that Sun Belt. Like, how did you learn maybe from all the other teams in the league? I know you mentioned Georgia State, and then also tell us a little bit about Tookie. You can't talk about Georgia Southern without talking about one of the all-time leading scorer. Is he the all-time leading scorer?
I believe he is the all-time leading.
I thought he was. I know we hear about him all the time down here. We get Georgia Southern radio and Waycross for the games, and man, they still talk about it. So
that's a crazy story, which Daniel involves Corey Ball, and this is how I'm gonna take it back. So we are recruiting early, November, September, and Corey has a guard that was really we really like, Daniel Peace. I'm correct, right?
Yep, Jonesboro.
Yep, and we really liked him. I think Andrew was the guy that was, head and kind of recruiting him. We had him on campus. We thought we were gonna get him, and he chooses Troy, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, goes to Troy with Phil Cunningham.
Yep, with Phil, and we were kind of like, okay, we've got to find a guard. So next thing you know, there's Rick Ray gets let go at Mississippi State. I had known Tukey because we played against him when I was at St. Francis when he was at Morgan County. And a lot of times players kind of know each other. So he knew a lot of my players. I knew him. Well, people forget that Charlemagne Gibbons had just taken a job in college at FAU with Mike Curry. And so Jamon Sims, who I knew very well from my time in Henry County, because he was at Luella.
Well,
he had taken a job in Morgan County, and he calls me. He says, Huff, I need some help. Like, I need to help get Tukey recruited again, and I don't have as much insight as maybe you have. You've done it more than I. And I remember just, cracking the joke. Ha, ha, ha. Tell him just come to Georgia Southern. He'll be the all-time lead. He'll be the best player in history down here. Well, we kind of go through and I make some contacts for him, help him get connected with Josh Passon was at Memphis, and, UGA, Cincinnati. I just went through a gamut of places, but it's late. Like we're talking about it's March, April, and either people don't have a spot or they're gonna have to maneuver some stuff, and it really wasn't working out. There was another team in the Sun Belt that will remain nameless, told me that another kid that they took was better than him. Obviously that wasn't true, but so we were also looking at a JUCO point guard named Marcus Johnson. And he was coming on a visit and he misses his flight. And so the visit gets pushed back like 2-3 weeks. But during that time, Larry Dixon became the point man for Tukey. And we keep pushing it and pushing it. And so Marcus Johnson is supposed to come on a visit on a Thursday. Well, Tukey comes on an unofficial visit on a Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember which day. Well, Wednesday night, Mark is basically saying, I want Tukey because I have him for 4 years instead of having a guy for 2 years. How can we get it done? Wednesday, about 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, Tukey commits to Georgia Southern. Marcus Johnson ends up going to Arkansas Little Rock. He's an all-conference player too, but Tukey's a 4-year all-conference player. It was amazing what Tukey was able to do. And I knew from the jump, because I remember walking into Mark's office and saying, Mark, would we be interested in Tukey Brown? Huff, we can't get him. I said, I don't know. I think we can.
Love it. What about all the ties right there? And then I saw Peace play 2 years against you guys, and seeing Tukey play. And then Tukey obviously had unbelievable success. Peace and them got to play in the tournament. They won the conference tournament, played Duke in the first round. And so everybody got where they needed to go, I guess. All the fits were good. Right. And everything worked out unlike we planned it.
I know. And it's crazy because everything worked out for everybody involved. But I say this to my staff right now. Sometimes the best recruit is the one that you don't get. Right? Not saying Daniel wouldn't have done great things at Georgia Southern or Marcus Johnson, but Tukey has become kind of Georgia Southern. Correct. If you think about Georgia Southern, you think about Mike Sanders, you think about Michael Curry, and you think about Tukey Brown. Yeah. Like those are the three people that you think about, like when you think about Georgia Southern men's basketball.
And the sad thing is, probably now he'd be transferring to Memphis or Tech or Georgia after a couple of years, that you don't get the 4 years, right? With the and all the rest. You have a couple of high scoring years and goodbye.
Stay positive, Searle. Stay positive.
I know, right?
Sorry,
stay positive.
Listening to too many podcasts about the NILs and the transfer portal.
All right, Huff. So were you at Southern 1 year or 2 years?
1 year.
And then where'd you go?
I remember walking in, or I remember Coach Byington coming in. He said, Huff, I love you, man, but you can't get stuck in this position. I think you're a coach. You know, because at that time, Dobos couldn't get on the floor. It's not like now Dobos can get on the floor. Like Dobos can go out and recruit now a little bit. Like you couldn't do any of that. He said, you need to be an assistant. Well, Montez Robinson had just gotten a job at Alcorn State. You know, I knew Montez a little bit. He knew some people I knew. And Coach Byington was really a little bit behind of why I was able to get the assistant job at Alcorn State and become the recruiting coordinator and everything else that it entailed at a HBCU at a low major. You know, took my talents, as they say, to Alcorn State in Lorman, Mississippi. And you want to talk about the biggest jump that I've ever had as a coach? Going from being a Metro Atlanta guy, could deal with Statesboro. I didn't have any problem with Statesboro. But you go to Lorman, Mississippi, and realize Walmart is an hour and a half away. Ooh. That's that Alcorn has to have their own gas station and fire department on campus because everything else is about 20 to 25 minutes away.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of Atlanta people would be scared of Statesboro. Statesboro is a metropolis compared to.
Hey, Statesboro was great compared to Lorman, Mississippi.
So that's your first time, other than your summer in Houston, where you're out of the state of Georgia, correct?
out of the state of Georgia, but was able to make some great connections. My guy Shoes, who does some scouting down in Mississippi. Obviously, you get a chance to, Mississippi has great JUCO basketball, so you learn even more about JUCO basketball down in Mississippi. Obviously, the Jackson, Mississippi area has great high school basketball. So I learned a lot during those times in Mississippi, being outside of Georgia. Obviously, you learn about the SWAC. Then you learn more about, yes, Georgia Southern had money game, guarantee games, but you really learn about it when you go to a low major, like how much money you have to raise, what do you have to do. And because I had done the Dobo job at Georgia Southern, you don't have a Dobo at Alcorn. So not only I'm a recruiting coordinator, I'm over travel. And we start the year with a 15-day road trip. So imagine if I wasn't organized or hadn't done that job, what that could have been like. I mean, you're flying from, because you got to drive to New Orleans to fly out. So you're driving to New Orleans, you fly, to Corpus Christi, to UTEP, to Portland, to Indiana. Like it was a crazy trip.
And that had to be different. You had just come from winning state championships and being the big dog in private single A, Georgia Southern being one of the top dogs in the Sun Belt, to now being at a place where you play out of your 13 non-conference games, I assume at least 10 of them are bye games, if not more. And, I know how it is in JUCO and high school. We all sit back and watch those teams. Man, if I was there, I'd win 25 games. No, you wouldn't, because you're going to play those bye games. You got to do it for the school. How was that experience? And just kind of walk us through, like, what do your guys feel like after non-conference? I mean, that's got to be tough.
It's tough. So what we try to do, we try to break our season down kind of into twos or threes, if that makes sense. So we call those non-conference games, those guarantee games, preseason. Like, we wanted to win now, don't get me wrong, but we understood what they were going, how they were going to help us. So whether we were playing Portland, whether we were playing Indiana, whether we were playing Oakland, whether we were playing UTEP, like we were using those as kind of a preseason. And then those 2 to 3 games, non-Division I games, that was kind of like the regular season for us, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, all right, so we're using that preseason, what we learned from those guarantee games, let's execute versus the Blue Mountains or whoever else we were playing, the non-D1s. And then we used our conference schedule kind of like as the playoffs. And it really helped us. It helped our kids lock in. We finished second in conference that year, finished 15-15 overall, the first non-losing season Alcorn had in like 12, 13 years. Wow. And we were on APR. I know APR is dead now. Nobody talks about it, but we were, I say we were in APR hell, which meant even in recruiting, as a recruiting coordinator, you couldn't, every high school kid had to have a 3.0. And even the JUCO kids had to have like a 2.7, maybe, if I can remember correctly. So it put some parameters on even how you were recruiting. And we were able to get it done in that year, even so much so that who we were able to recruit going into the next year set Alcorn up to play for the conference championship versus Texas Southern, lost by 1 in overtime. So
the following year, yeah.
Following year.
You talked about this when you were referencing Dutchtown and starting from zero. You talk about it now. Corey's with me here, right? How you measure success and how you structure the season when you have those guarantee games, and then the non-D1 easier games, and then your championship run. Love that. I hope our viewers are kind of picking up on the importance.
I think Dr. Kirk was going to watch this and take full credit for Alcorn.
as he should. Right?
That will now go on his resume.
Right.
But tell him to retweet though. OBP podcast. We'll take the views. He can take the credit.
I'll also add, like, another thing you learn is, and I actually got this from Coach Byington, is find a way. That was one of his big sayings, is don't tell me why we can't get it done. Don't make an excuse, find a way. So I took that to Alcorn, because people say, well, why do HBCUs don't get out and all this other stuff? Well, to me, that's a load of crap, because we did it Alcorn. We just found a way to get it done. We didn't have a great recruiting budget to do it, but what it meant is you had to be resourceful. And so I remember learning from Andrew and Tim and Larry, like, and it was something that Mark wanted. He didn't want you to tell him, well, I'm going to Atlanta to watch this one kid. Well, if you're just going to watch this one kid in one school, you don't need to go. Tell me how many schools or places you can go in that one day or how long you're down there. So basically, anytime I went, especially since I was from Atlanta, anytime I went to Georgia or Atlanta, I'm there for multiple days. And I remember distinctly a week in September. I told Coach, I said, I'm going to spend a whole week in Georgia, but I guarantee you I'm going to hit 4 to 5 schools a day. Obviously, because of relationships, I knew some people practice at 6 in the morning. Some people had PE classes, or I get to a JUCO because I think I came down to see you, Corey.
Yeah, I think we went earlier that day to help you get to the next place you were going.
I think I went to TIFF after I saw you.
Yeah, I think that was it. Yep.
And so it was just you had to work it out and you got it done. But I was able to see multiple people. And if I ever came to Atlanta to help the recruiting budget, I wasn't going to dock it for meals or a place to stay if I was coming to Atlanta. And that's how we use avenues like that to get it done. It was just finding a way to get it done. And I still use those kind of avenues here where you really don't have a recruiting budget. And Corey will tell you, I was at Waycross 3 to 4 times this year.
That's right.
Driving there and driving right back.
That's right. That's right. All right.
I got to go back, Corey, something you just said, right? To give credit to the junior college coaches. You moved your practice up because you knew you'd have a college coach coming in, and you do that for your players. Let's make these adjustments. Let's get them the exposure. And that's a credit to you on how you're.
Sometimes the players don't like it. It's according to what they don't like it in the moment. They appreciate it afterwards.
Exactly. But it's the right kind of choice there. Good deal.
All right. So tell us where was next and how long were you at Alcorn?
So I was at Alcorn 1 year, and here's the crazy part. I took another pay cut leaving Georgia Southern to go to Alcorn, but I'm an assistant coach now. Right. So when people want to get in this business, you've got to take a step back sometimes to take a step forward, if that makes sense. So I'm there 1 year. We have a lot of success, but I don't make enough money to sustain. I had a house. I still have my house in Georgia. My tenant moves out. I can't find a tenant. Well, I can't play for both places, and I tried my best to really make it work because I wanted to stay in college. Well, also at this time, there become 2 job openings in college back home. Georgia State has an opening, and Georgia Tech has an opening. And then there was this high school that kept calling me, like, would you be interested in coming back to coach high school? And if I'm honest, and they know this story already, I didn't want to go back and coach high school. I just, you felt you had got into college, and I'm there, let me stay there. And then I'm a man of God. So I remember saying this prayer: God, close every door that you want closed. And the one that's left open is the one that you want me to have, that you want me to go down. And so I remember that night, Josh Pastner, who had just gotten the job at Georgia Tech, calls and says, Coach, I don't think it's going to work. I don't think you have enough experience, yada, yada. Okay. The next morning, Ron Hunter calls. He had hired somebody else, which happened to be Sherman White at that time. And so the only open door was Duluth High School. And I'm still like, I'm still trying to fight God on this. Like, I don't know if this is what I really want to do. And so they say, well, just come down and interview when you come down to Atlanta to recruit. So in honesty, I'm prepared for an interview. Like I want to take it, like to get it. But in the back of my mind, I said, if I got to teach English again, I'm not taking this job. And that was really about so I go through the interview, everything's good. And at the end of the interview, they said, well, you have any questions? I said, well, what are you going to have me teach? They say, well, because, we know you've had success in high school and you've been a college coach, we're going to put you in ISS. I said, like, in-school suspension? It's like, yeah. I said, I still get the same salary as a teacher? They're like, yeah, you get the same salary. And if anybody knows about Gwinnett County, they start school early, like 7 a.m., but they get out at like 2:15. They said, and you'll be done by 12 every day. Well, to make long story short, I accepted that job.
Sweeten the deal. Okay.
And it was, we were able to have some real success in Duluth, 3 straight, playoff appearances, the most wins in a 3-year span in their school history. and was able to coach some guys there too. One who just declared for the draft, who played at Baylor, won a national championship, Adam Flagler, Coach Devin Evans, who's unfortunately in the portal, having played at Omaha, Nebraska, and at Southwest Mississippi, the JUCO level. Also coached, Jalen Hodges, who was an NAIA All-American out there in Montana. Coached two guys who are actually on my team right now. One who's an All-American, and Hector Rosario, and Jordan Blue. So just had some guys that, Will Huzzy, who played basketball for us, but is actually a star football player at UTC right now. Actually just graduated this past weekend, as a matter of fact. So had some success, man. But here's what's funny. I know Corey will laugh about this. We were in 7A basketball. We didn't get transfers. Going back to your transfer comment, Daniel. So I always said we were a mid-major and a high-major league.
Right.
And I say that because the first year we get to the Sweet 16 and we lose to Pebblebrook. Colin Sexton, Drew Drennan, Jared Jones, Dwight Murray. I'm missing some. Elias Harden. All those guys went high major Division I, right? The second year we lose Sweet 16 to Norcross. BJ Boston, he's an NBA. Kyle Sturdivant, Daniel Ramsey, Issa Muhammad, Dalvin White. Like, they had 7 Division I's on the team. The third year there, we lose to Meadow Creek. Daniel Dunn, Jalen Benjamin, Jamar Chapman. So that's why I said we were I had two Division I guys in 3 years. And these are the teams we lose to every year in the playoffs.
They had 6 or 7 on their roster.
On their roster, right.
Right. That's that 7A and your Gwinnett corridor there, up to 85. It's a struggle. But Duluth over the years has been up and down.
Mhm.
There was a little bit of a rebuild there. How'd you do that? A school that had been there but needed to be boosted. What was your approach?
Basically came in with a plan, and I looked at, okay, we're not getting transfers. How can I be different, right? And so I had never pressed before, ever. Like, that wasn't a thing I had done.
Corey's not going to talk to you anymore. If you don't press.
Well, I remember going to his practices, so I was using some of his stuff.
Yeah.
So here's what's crazy. Virgil Amy, who I worked for at Wichita High School, he becomes my assistant my first year at Duluth. Well, he used to be the head coach at Gainesville back in those Gainesville East Hall days of pressing. And we sat down and said, we're going to be undersized. We're going to press, and we're going to cause havoc. Then I took something that we did at Georgia Southern. We called it X5 back in the day, where we switched everything. And we switched every ball screen. And because we were 6'2" to 6'6", it worked. And that was a thing I think that I took that helped us be successful, along with just helping those parents and players understand that we were going to help them get better, but we were going to challenge them as far as being students, and as far as being people. And we did that. And that's another example of creating that family atmosphere of what we're talking about, where you get the Adam Flaglers or whoever it is, those guys always stay together. I had Lamont Smith, who was a point guard, reach out to me the other day. Just, Coach, how you doing? I ain't talked to you in about a month. Just wanted to check in with you. That was kind of how our team was.
How about that? So listen, you go from a mid-major and high-major land and circle back to single-A private. You return to single-A private. Who would do that? Who'd leave a 7A school to go to single-A private with no athletes and no skills, right? So what was the choice and decision there? This is what's been really interesting to hear your thought process along the way.
I guess everybody could say that about every move I made. What dummy would leave those players at St. Francis to go take a double job? Well, why would you go take less money and go be assistant? Why are you coming back to high school? Why are you going to leave a program that you got back on the map to go to Holy Innocents? Well, it starts with being able to work for one of the best people that I've ever known, in Tony. That's my guy through and through. Like,
yeah,
that was it, man. I'm gonna be honest. He sold it. I had always looked at Holy Innocents, even at St. Francis, as like, one of the pillars of private schools. Like, if there's a place you could go work at a private school, that was one of them. And when he presented it, the opportunity to me, it was a no-brainer. And I knew there was work to be done. And if people don't remember, we started off 1-10 and lost the top 100 player that transferred out. And people thought, well, this is going to be a lost year. And we flipped that thing and went to the Elite Eight. And I tell people we were 3 minutes away, maybe 2 from beating St. Francis in the Elite Eight, which was really crazy to have to play them at St. Francis for a chance to go to the Final Four.
Right.
Like, we were up by 1 with 2.5 minutes to play, and our starting 4-man, who's not playing college basketball anywhere, he hurts his ankle. We thought he had broke it. And we have to put in a sophomore who the moment was a little too big for him. And we had went over there out of bounds plays all week. And he just got lost, and they scored a layup. And it's tough now it's a shot clock in Georgia, but it wasn't a shot clock then. And it's tough when you got a foul or you don't make a shot and got a foul again. But that team, man, Garrison Powell and Justin Wilson, Landon Cartier, who's at Kennesaw State playing football, and some other guys who really helped us, Owen Dunn and Grant Essler, Carter Kennedy. Those guys really helped build that culture that followed the next year and got them to play for the state championship.
Right. And they came within 0.7 seconons of a state championship as Cash Grady hit his fadeaway.
Oh man,
Disco, right?
We are in the airport going to the national tournament, and I'm listening to the game, and I'm sitting there man, they're gonna win the championship. I'm excited because they're up like 8-10 in the fourth quarter. And some reason I couldn't get a signal, and I'm trying to follow it on Twitter. I'm like, what do you mean the game is tied? What do you mean? What is going on? Like, that couldn't happen. And I was so hurt for those guys and so hurt for my guy, Mario Mays, and that staff, because I know how hard they had worked to get it done. And, one of the big things we talk about, whether long, short, how long I was at places, I always tried to leave it better than I found it. And I look at, St. Francis, what Drew was able to do after I left. Look at, even Alcorn, the year after I left, they playing for the conference championship, the lose Holy Innocents. Just try to leave it better than I found it.
Well, some people say that and you don't have some proof behind it. But as we go through your path, it is true, man. Every stop has been a step forward, a step better. And it's hard to leave, but you're leaving people, teams, players in a better spot. And that's a good thing.
How different was single A private from 2008, 2010, whenever it was? When did you leave? It was a little later than that, about
2000. I left 2014.
So 2014 to 2020. What was there any changes? Because I know in Georgia, for those that don't know, they change regions and classifications about every 2 years.
So two of the biggest things, like, a lot of times, when I was at St. Francis, we would play anybody. And even up to our last year, single A wasn't split private public. So you were still playing the Turner counties. Dr. Eric Holland was at Turner before he got the TIF. I remember when I won the championship, he calls me and goes, man, you beat Whitfield. I never could do that. He was at Turner. But I also think the talent, because so many schools had popped up from 2014 to 2020, it kind of diluted private school basketball a little bit. It wasn't the same. And what I mean by that is, so when I was at St. Francis, people forget that championship game versus Whitfield, you had the guys we had on our team, but Whitfield had the Eric Lockett's. They had like 4 Division I players on their team. North Cobb Christian, who was our region, had 4 Division I players on their team. You talk about Green Forest was still loaded. Like Wesleyan had Division I. Like we in the Final Four in 2 years. We played for the state championship, lost 1 and won 1 when I was at St. Francis. We had to go through Ahmed Hill, was at Aquinas, right? Then the next year we had to go through Turtle Jackson, who was at Athens Christian. Like there was talent everywhere, and Division I talent all through single A private. Now there's nothing against single A private now, but anybody can tell you the battles that you had to face back then. Like, you didn't have easy nights. Like it was a battle when you got to the playoffs.
And are you saying the players have gone on to higher classifications, or there's more schools and they're more spread out? So
It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both.
Okay.
And then you add in, you know, economics to it. So how many people want to, I mean, if you're going to choose, let's say, a top-notch public high school that has great educational value, then why am I going to pay to go to a private school? It doesn't make as much sense now, especially with the difference in economics now. So just a little bit different. And then there are more private schools. Like, you know, more of them between that time had jumped to Georgia High School Association, and they weren't in Geesa anymore.
Mhm.
So you had more of them that were playing, and it just was a little bit different, just a little bit different. And then you had more schools then who were afraid, or when I got to Holy Innocents, who didn't want to play private schools, because you had that sentiment that, well, private schools still your players. And this may not be a great statement that I'm going to make right now, but there are more transfers to public schools than there ever were to private schools.
True. Very true.
It's a true statement, right? That's the other part right there. So Huff, Washington High, Dutchtown, Cedartown, AIS. That's the one. I missed that one. I did not know that was on the resume. St. Francis, Dobo at Southern, Alcorn, Duluth, Holy Innocents, and finally, and this is where we probably should have started, the Hees. Where are you? Tell us about it and why it's a special place and why you chose to go there. Back to that same question on choices on your moves, man.
A lot of times people talk about becoming a head coach at the collegiate level. There are not many people who get an opportunity to do that. And I don't think I could pass up that opportunity to look back 20 years and say, man, I never got a chance to do that. I wish I would have done that. So I had to take this opportunity, which I truly feel was designed by God, because a lot of people don't understand Holy Innocents is Holy Innocents Episcopal School, while Voorhees is backed by the Episcopal Church. And I don't think that's a coincidence that I was a guy they were looking for who had a background like that. Yes, I was, you know, a person they called who somebody had told them they should talk to me. But I had to give this a shot. And that was one of the reasons. As much as I loved where I was, like I said, was probably at one of the top, if not the top 5 high schools in Georgia, in my opinion, at Holy Innocents, because of the administration and Tony. But the opportunity to come to at that time, Voorhees College, and become a head coach, and obviously a guy that went to an HBCU, had coached at one, to come to one. And at that time, I'll be honest, I knew about NAI, but I didn't know as much as obviously I know now. And I was blessed because I had worked with a guy at Alcorn, Alex Ireland, who was now the head coach at Dalton State. So I was able to pick somebody's brain about NAI before, you know, while all this was going on. And people don't understand, all this happened in the midst of COVID. So like when we're talking about this job and coming down, we interview on Zoom, and then you get to the final 2 and you come down, and at that time, nobody's on campus. You know, I take the job in November 1st, 2020, and we don't start playing in January, and I only got 5 guys on my team. And I've got to go find the rest of the guys on my team and get us to mesh together. But it was an opportunity I think can only have been planned by God. And I was up for the opportunity. I was up for the challenge. I'm glad I'm here. I was excited about the opportunity to become a head coach at the collegiate level, to get back out and recruit some of Corey's guys.
As you've been down to Waycross numerous times.
Right.
And Coach, lean over a little bit. What does it say right there behind you? Welcome to, what does that say there? What's that one all about? Welcome to Wichita.
Oh, man,
National tourney.
That was a national tournament. We got blessed my first year, again, in the midst of COVID, to win our conference and go to the national tournament. Now, I will say this. They could have put us in Alabama. They could have put us in Florida. They sent us to Wichita, Kansas. But I'm grateful. I had never been to Wichita, so it was great. And so our guys signed that because it was people don't understand in the midst of COVID how tough that was. Like, again, 5 guys on the roster. You got to finish the rest of the roster. and be ready to play in January. So those guys got on campus January 2nd. And we had to play January 11th. Like, we were doing tour days, we were doing everything. And so that was a special team, a special moment. Like, and I wanted those guys, I wanted to remember it. I wanted those guys to remember it. Just a special time, man.
Well, it seems crazy as we go through all the stops. It seems like every stop you made, even going back to when you got injured in high school, has prepared you for each stop. It seems like a lot of things go back and forth. Dr. Kurt, kind of like we joked, prepared you some for Alcorn, but it sounds like you also Byington prepared you some for there, and then being in the HBCU, at Morehouse, and then Alcorn prepared you some for Voorhees University, and then all the success you've had in quick turnarounds, and then building a program like you did at St. Francis and Duluth has prepared you for Voorhees as well. So you're in the third year. The first year you make national tournament, even amidst COVID, getting the job late, playing a second half season only. How is it now going where you had your first semi real season, where you played a regular time and all that? How has that changed going into transitioning into year 3?
Man, you learn a lot, man. And I think year 3 is really where you can really, I'll say this, people think after year 1, when you've had success, that you really built your culture and that the culture can sustain itself through year 2. But in reality, culture can never sustain itself. You also always have to have your thumb on it. But in year 3, you now have more parameters. You now are more intentional about what you're doing, whether it's the culture, whether it's recruiting, whether it's anything on campus. And so I think I've been able to learn so much, because first year you're here and the only people that are here are athletes. And as soon as the season's over, they're gone, right? And so do you come to this year and everybody's on campus, but then COVID spikes a little bit and, you got vaccination stuff. Like, for instance, this offseason was the first time we had our guys to do offseason workouts. Like, so I think it's just you're learning. Every day is something new and you continue to get better. And if you don't, then somebody's going to pass you by. So whether it's, a plug like you guys, listening to your podcast and listen to other people, talking to people, Corey will tell you, we've had conversations just about recruiting or the basketball, what we're doing many a times. I think we just have to continue to get better. And in year 3, I think we are going to be better, not just what our record's going to entail, but just how we're going to be better and intentionally better on and off the floor.
It's awesome. Awesome. So now that takes it to the best part of the show. We get to go to the lightning round, where me and Cyril both have about 3 or 4 questions for you. We'll put the shot clock up like they do in Georgia high schools now. But we'll also allow you to, get offensive rebound and reset a little bit if you need to on some of them.
Okay.
Cyril, you want to start us off?
I can do that. And that was a perfect little segue there. Shot clock, good or bad for high school basketball in the state of Georgia? Yes or no?
It's great. So yes, definitely needed.
Why?
I think it prepares the kids. Like, we always talk about preparing them for the next level. That's what high school is supposed to be about, preparing you for college. Well, the same way in high school basketball, that shot clock is going to prepare them for the next level of playing collegiate basketball if that's what they want to do. Development is so big, and the only way you can get better and be prepared for it is to develop. So as coaches, as players, to understand what the game is like at the next level. And if we're truly preparing them, understand internationally, they've been doing this since they were like 6, 7, 10, whatever. And theirs is a 24-second shot clock. So I think it's good. We got to have it.
All right.
South Carolina just got it too. So,
they did? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are very few high school teams out there that can hold the basketball without a turnover for more than 40 seconds anyways.
Thank you.
Man or zone? If you've got the personnel you want, what are you running?
Man.
All
I
right.
even think if you're playing zone, there's some man principles that they still have to understand.
It's funny how everybody says that in their answers, huh, Corey? Man or zone? If zone has a lot of man principles, it's all the same in the end.
But you better have a switch up now. You can't just play man exclusively. I know Corey likes to, but
That's a good point too. Yes. How are you changing tempo with your zones? All right. This is a tough one, and maybe you can answer out of both sides. Tony Watkins or Kurt Miller?
oh wow. I plead the fifth. But I learned so much from both of those guys. I can't give an answer. I was at two different points in my career, but what I've learned from each one of them has been immensely important in my career. Two of the best people, man. I forget about what they do. Just two of the best people, period. And both of those guys have helped me personally, not just for my career, but personally, and helping me get to where I am.
There you go. And we've heard a lot of the Dr. Kurt stuff, but what's something that you've picked up from Tony along the way that's helping you?
His ability to manage personalities, man. Like, especially as an athletic director and at a place like Holy Innocents where they've had a lot of athletic success, which means you have great coaches. And we know sometimes with great coaches comes with other things, you know. But I think him having been a coach and having been a championship coach allows him to understand how to deal with those personalities. When they have a bad game, how just to kind of let them go, but pick them up the next day and say, hey, it's going to be all right. I'm not firing you because you just had one bad game. I'm not firing you because you had a bad season. Like, here's how we're going to get better, and I'm here to support you. But also being there to make sure whatever you need, he's going to be there to support you. And I think that's what was really big of having an AD like Tony and having a friend and a person that you could just walk into his office and just sit down and talk to him. But we can also talk about how to make boys basketball at Holy Innocents better, but also talk about how to make baseball at Holy Innocents better. So
right.
How he deals with personalities. I think I learned so much about him with that. And we got to do that a lot as a college basketball coach.
Yep. Within the administrative team and with your team, with the players. That's right. Okay, so one of the most recent guests we had on was Tommy Brown, and we asked him what his favorite book was, and he said, the book I'm writing, you need to buy it. So here's the question for you, Huff. What's your favorite podcast? And if you want to plug your own, that's okay. But if you want to give us another one, go for it.
So I'll probably have two. One is a newer one with called Elite Question Askers. And so basically they give a question. That's what they talk.
Question askers.
And they talk about it. It's from a former college basketball athlete and coach, Jason Wells, and two college basketball coaches, Mo Williams, who's at Salisbury, D3, and Dedrick Taylor, who's at Cal State Fullerton, D1 on the West Coast. And, you know, a lot of times has nothing to do with basketball, but they're asking questions like how to deal with conflict, you know. So I think that's one. My next one is a combination of probably Slapping the Glass or what is it called? Hold on, I'm gonna look at my phone because I was just listening to it this morning.
Off the Beaten Path, I think is what.
Well, I'm not counting that. That's number one, right? That's number one. Hoop Heads podcast. So those would be my two basketball ones.
There you go.
But your guy, I mean, come on now. Like the guests you've had, I'm just a small little pea about the guests you got.
Big time stories. Corey, what's your go-to with food? Small time coach, big time eater.
Yeah, that's it. Small time hoops, big time food.
There we go. And we'll get to that in a second. Hey, one thing that you do, you've got a great online presence, Huff, and you're always sharing messages, verses, motivational lines. What's one that is, we'll give you what's your favorite, but what's one that's really resonated, that's important to you, that you share with your team or have on your locker room wall?
Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans for you. And I just think God is never gonna fail us. Like, he knows the plan he has for us. And my career is an example of that. Like, I thought I was creating this plan, but in reality, every plan has been designated by him to set me up for whatever the next step was. Whether it was 6 or 7 years at St. Francis, 4 years at Washington, 2 at Dutchtown, or whether it was the 1 year stops that I had, Alcorn State, Georgia Southern, Cedartown, AIS, all those things matter. And I just try to make sure those guys understand that whatever the plan he has for you, he's not going to fail you.
Even that Duluth door, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks, Coach. Love it all. Corey, Corey's got some more lightning that may be time to strike the belly, huh?
All
right. Before we get to the food.
right.
I got one. I know me and Huff, a quick history story. We met when I was doing camps at Clayton State. He came with Dutchtown. And then we even brought some of the players over to ref the camp at Dutchtown that they ran. And then when I was at Truett, he brought his team over to Truett. So we had a lot of interaction with camps. I know he's running team camps now at Voorhees University, and that'd be a great place to take your team if you don't have a spot yet. Quick plug. But give us, with all that being said, you've been a camp guy. You've done the Georgia State, the Georgia Techs, all of them in Georgia. Give me the one, and even if it's not in Georgia, the one or two team camps that kind of, you wish were still going that aren't going, or the one that you would go to every year if you were a coach, other than your own.
So there are three, right? Okay. You get this plug, because that Clayton State camp back in the day, it was jumping. Like, every team was in it. You could see any player that you wanted to see. Like, the talent was there, the competition was there. Clayton State is definitely, back when you were there, the Coach Gibbons, like, that thing was the camp that you had to go to. No doubt about it. Probably the next one was when Coach Schumann was at UTC.
Ooh.
That was such a great camp because you got a chance to go out of town, sleep in the dorms, but like, you got a chance to play some great competition. And it was still a few Georgia teams that went, but you got a chance to face those Tennessee teams, White Stations, some of the teams from Memphis. It was great. And that's really where Coach George Washington and I, Pebblebrook, really got to know each other. I had a young St. Francis team. He was just getting going at Pebblebrook with that first young team he had, who had the kid that Russ signed at South Alabama. Can't remember his name right now, but they had like 3-4 Division I's on it. So that's the next one. And I think what Coach Hunter and them did at Georgia State with their team camp has now become a staple in Atlanta. I think those are the 3 camps that sparked my interest, and I always say those are the 3 camps right there.
I like it. All right, let's go to the food for the belly, my favorite part. Okay, so give us, you're an Atlanta guy. I know Atlanta's a big foodie place. So give me 2 or 3 places you're going to eat, in Atlanta. You got to take somebody that's never been to Atlanta to eat. Where are you going?
So I'm going to say this because I took Georgia Southern there when we went to Atlanta to play Georgia State, and now Coach Byington has to go every time. So Mary Max has to be on there.
Yes.
Right?
Love Mary Max.
What is my next spot?
Mary Max shows up for almost everybody on the pod when we talk about Atlanta. It's amazing how entrenched that is, how special a spot it is.
All right, so for another one for me has to be on the because it's near the AUC and because of its history, Pascal's. All right, the chicken there is great. If you go on a Sunday, like, you might be in a line, but it's going to be really good for you. So that's number 2. And then what would be my third one? I would probably go, if you don't, this is more high end now. This is going to be a Tony Watkins special right here. If you don't go to Bones and try to steak, then you're missing out. But that's a high end special. I don't know. Me and your budgets right now, Corey, can't get to that.
I don't think we're in that one yet. I like it. I like it.
Coach Huff, find a way to get.
Find a way, make it happen, right?
All right. So when you were up in Rome, I know you were in that area. Was there a spot you hit? I know you're doing a lot of driving, so maybe you didn't, but was there a spot you hit up there?
It wasn't one in Rome, or at least I can't remember it. I'll say that.
All right, let's go Georgia Southern. Did you have one down there?
Oh, man. Georgia Southern. So I don't remember the name of it, but it was this chicken spot in a gas station. Like, so I don't
I
know.
love
If
it.
you
I love
remember,
it, man.
if you come into Georgia Southern,
Yeah.
the regular way off 16, and right when you turn on the highway that leads you to Georgia Southern, turn right. On the left-hand side, there's this gas station with a chicken spot inside of it. Man, had to hit it like once or twice a week.
I love it. I love it. All right. So what about this one? With all your success, and I know you've done a lot of things, we just briefed over it, but you know, doing a podcast, love of the game, you started it. You know, you helped start Embrace, done a lot with it. You've done a lot of the coaching clinics that are in Georgia. You know, you run those, the name's leaving my brain right now. What's the name of it?
MCA of Georgia.
Yes. And you've done a lot with that. And, but with some of those, who's probably the best big time guest you've dealt with, not as far as a name, but as far as a person? Like who was the guy that you were like, man, what a great dude?
Hanzo Martin, by far.
Really?
Just what he's able to impart in you is not just what he does if he's on your podcast or clinic or whatever, but what he does after the fact. Like you become part of his family almost. Mm-hmm. And some things we've talked about since then, like he's been great for me. Just been great.
Awesome. Awesome. That's cool. All right. Last one. I've been asking this of guys, probably the last 6 or 7 shows we've had, and I've kind of liked it where it's went. What's you know, you become a big time college coach, you're a big name in high school, winning state championships. What's the one time where you kind of thought you put your name was on the map and then you got humbled a little bit? Somebody didn't know who you were. I thought you were somebody else, or somebody ignored you completely. What's one of those moments? I always like hearing
I definitely have one. So obviously, I leave high school on the highest note ever. You win a state championship, you go become the doughboy at Georgia Southern. Well, remember, you say there are like 5 top jobs in Georgia. And I don't know if you remember that. So it's probably 2015. The Buford job comes open. And I'm like, oh, be the head coach at Buford? I'll go back to high school for that. And I send my stuff in. Probably less than 2 hours later. Thank you, but no thank you. I was so deflated, like, man, I won a state championship. I was like,
don't you know who
get an
I am?
opportunity? I can't even get an interview.
I think they might have had their mind made up already.
They probably did, but still, I was just like, man, like.
In 2 hours, they told you no.
Right.
They were quick to get back to you.
They were quick, like, and it wasn't like an automated response. Like, it was a like he knew who he was talking to, but like, no, I'm good.
I love it. I love it. All right, best gym, worst gym that you played in, coached in.
Ooh. Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble with the worst gym. Probably 2 worst gyms, but one had a great atmosphere. Oakwood University. They got more dead spots than the old Boston Garden. And the people, like, if this is your bench, there are people right behind you looking at what you're drawing up. But the atmosphere in there was really good. The other worst one, don't get mad at Rory. Coach Griffin and I went to Morehouse together. He just won a state championship at Green Forest. But man, that rubber floor at Green Forest, it's pretty tough over there as far as a worst gym. Best gym. That new gym at Talladega is pretty nice.
Okay.
Like,
or best game at a spot, right? That can count too.
Best atmosphere in gym would have to be Grand Canyon.
Ooh, I've heard some people say that.
Yeah, we played there when I was at Alcorn, and like it's not too big, not too small, and the atmosphere is really amazing. But some of the other best gyms now, Troy has an amazing gym.
They do.
They have an amazing gym. You know, I think people really sleep on Morehouse. Yeah, I'm giving my alma mater a plug. Like when you can pack that thing out, like it's loud, it's big, it's spacious, it's a really nice gym. And I think USC Aiken has a nice gym.
Yeah, that's good ones. That's good ones. I used to love it when I was at Clayton as a player. We always played Morehouse, Morris Brown, and Clark Atlanta, home and home. Those were all, good experiences, great places to play. Morris Brown, some people might not even know what that is anymore, but it was
Hey,
before
they got their accreditation back. So it
Really?
might be pretty soon
Man,
they
that'd
get
be-
back to playing basketball.
All right.
That's
I like it.
good.
I like it. I found out something cool today. I like it. All right. Well, let's close it up. We've taken a lot of your time and we really appreciate you giving it to us. Man, what a great show. One more time, if you don't know Huff, in his humble beginnings and all the way through to head college coach and everything in between, but also a guy that's really helped Georgia and Atlanta high school basketball, does a lot of things outside of the court and coaching. We mentioned some of them, but just, a guy's mentioned it, online presence, social media, all the place. There, when COVID was going on, there wasn't a Zoom that didn't exist with Huff on it. He somehow was a special guest or ran it or something. And that just shows you, the work he's done to promote the game more so than himself. And, we're just glad he took time off with us. Is there anything you want to say before we close it out, Huff?
Yeah, I just appreciate you guys and having this platform. A lot of times we hear it from coaches everybody knows, but I think we have to hear from guys like you talk about that people don't know about and how they got to where they are. Because if you truly want to learn about this business, I think you learn from it from the ground up, which is what my career is about, and I think a lot of other people's career is about. And then I would be regress if I didn't mention two things. You didn't ask me about the best place in Lauren, Mississippi.
I did.
That may be the top of my list.
Man, I'm mad I didn't ask now. I was asking because I figured there wasn't nothing around it. So go ahead.
Mr. D's. If you ever drive and get to Alcorn State in Lauren, Mississippi, right before you get to what they call the stretch, there's a spot called Mr. D's. You can look it up online. He's been on YouTube. I think one of the channels that talk about food. Amazing.
I like it.
Amazing. And then last, just the people here at Voorhees, man, they have been great for me. My athletic director, Charlene Johnson, our team president, Ronnie Hopkins, my assistant coach, James Williams, our players. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for all of those people. Excited about what we're doing, becoming a university. We've been around 125 years. Not a lot of people can say that, from a high school to a technical college, junior college, to a college, to a university, all in 125 years. And we're not going anywhere. We'll be around for a while, even longer. And just excited what year 3 is going to bring for us.
There you go. That is historic. And it's funny how we don't ask coaches who have been through Mississippi about their place to eat, but they always cycle back. Coach Huff, right? When we talked to Stan Jones, he was like, wait, Starkville, I got a spot. So there's good food in Mississippi, people. Let's go see it. Let's go try it.
Yep.
Hey, our social media here for Off the Beaten Path, Instagram, Off Beaten Path Podcast, and Twitter, Off Beaten Path with the _ Coach Huff, how about you? Where do we follow you, find you? Where do you want people to check you out?
Twitter and Instagram for myself, just Coach Cabral Huff. And then for our program is Voorhees MB Ball for both. So
Okay.
look us up, follow us. Hopefully you like what you see on both of them.
Good deal. Hey, we like what we've heard here, the story all the way through from the very beginning to where you are now there at Voorhees. So thank you. And we could keep talking and talking. It's been incredible, but I think, Corey, time to wrap us up, huh?
Yes, sir, man. Thanks again, Huff. And thanks for those listening to the podcast. This is a show for those who want to coach, those who are into coaching, those who used to coach, those who hire and fire the coaches, and hopefully for those we've educated a little bit here and didn't get them out of coaching. Hopefully we'll keep them in it.
Keep them entertained. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate you guys.
Coach Huff.